The introduction of foods to infants is such a big topic. So we're going to take a few minutes and talk through a variety of aspects of when it's time to introduce foods, some of the things that we may want to introduce because of nutritional aspects, non-nutrition related reasons that we introduce food, and then we'll talk a little bit about allergies and kind of the current guidelines in terms of when to introduce some of those high allergen foods. So if you have a baby between the ages of 4 and 6 months, you know that you're heading into a time when you're going to be introducing solids. And one of the things that we want to remember is that we're looking to make sure that your infant is ready for the food that is coming to them. And if they're tracking, if they're watching you eat and they have interest in you eating, that's a really good sign, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are 100% ready. So one of the things that we want is for them to be able to sit up fairly independently. We know even babies at 7, 8, 9 months sometimes just randomly fall over, and even kids when they're standing at 2, 3 years of age might fall over, but for the most part we want them secure and sitting well. Ideally, they will have had lots of tummy time to get their neck nice and strong. If we have a baby with a floppy neck, they're not ready to ingest food just yet. So we want to make sure we have strength there to reduce the risk of choking. Another thing that not a lot of healthcare practitioners talk about is there's something called an extrusion reflex. An extrusion reflex is the fact that the tongue is actually designed early on to try to get anything out of the mouth that isn't a liquid. It's a safety piece for infants that are younger. That starts to dissipate. It may still be a little bit there when we start feeding. Whether you're going with baby-led weaning or purees, you may find that some of what goes in actually does come back out. That's totally fine. Part of the piece of introducing foods is exposure to new flavors and new textures that are different from the breast milk or the formula or the combination of those that the child has had up until this point. When we go to introduce foods, one of the reasons why 4 to 6 months is given as a range is because this is the time when the iron stores have started to dissipate within the baby. So children that are born full term have iron stores that have been handed over to them during time in utero. And when they dissipate, we know that iron is very, very, very important for the development of the brain. And so we have to start using this external option of the introduction of foods for iron. Having said that, the continuation of breast milk or formula feeding with iron fortified formula is definitely recommended. We still know that that is going to be the main source of nutrition. So recommendations to start introducing food doesn't mean it's their sole source of nutrition by any means. It's just to start to introduce these textures and flavors and to get iron-rich foods in. When we serve iron-rich foods, some have a form of iron called heme iron that is very absorbable. This would be under animal products that offer us iron. Non-animal products or plant-based products that offer a source of iron have something called non-heme iron. It's a little less bioavailable to the body. And so if you are offering things like beans and lentils and different types of grains, for example, that have iron in them, but this non-heme iron, offering a source of vitamin C at the same time is really great. When you go to introduce foods, I'm sure you'll be doing lots of research about, is it puree or is it baby-led weaning? And one of the things I think that's very important is to realize that it doesn't have to be one camp or the other. You could do some food as purees, you could do some along the lines of baby-led weaning, you could do the combination of some at the same time, or you could do different times of the day. One of the biggest things is we are looking for the child to develop their own feeding habits and to be able to pay attention to their hunger and satiety cues. So the grasp of the food and then the pincer grasp, we want that development to take place. We want them to be able to experiment with the spoon. Sometimes it goes all over before it actually goes in the mouth. Sometimes food goes into the mouth and back out of the mouth. The child can decide how much more they want to eat and when they plan to be done. And under that capacity, whether the food is pureed up a little bit or whether it is more in chunks under the realm of baby-led weaning, as long as we're allowing for the child to truly make those choices and listen to those cues and develop their skills, those are the important pieces. The other thing is that we need to make sure that our facial expression doesn't cause anxiety for baby. So if we have a mom who's chosen baby-led weaning, because they've heard that it's the way to go, but they're standing there with an anxious look on their face, baby may be worried as well. And so creating a situation where we're smiling and we're happy and we're right there supporting the baby can be very worthwhile. Another piece is not putting our preferences around food onto the baby. So perhaps there's a food that you don't really love, and when you go to serve it to the baby, you might be like, ooh, or you don't serve it to baby because you think, well, I don't like it, why would they like it? So allowing the baby to kind of develop their own version of what they like or don't like in terms of food types and textures and tastes. Under the realm of taste, we know that we don't need food to be bland for babies. We are recommending creating recipes that taste good. We like food that tastes good. Why wouldn't the baby like food that tastes good? And so we want to make sure that we are giving the baby opportunity for new textures, new tastes on a regular basis, and not sticking to kind of that old version of baby food that was super bland. In terms of allergens, we have new recommendations that came out over the past few years of when we would introduce high allergen foods. It was found in the past that we thought it was best to maybe wait till closer to a year of age for things like peanuts or egg whites. We have new research to show us that this wasn't the best information, it wasn't the best advice, and now we want to introduce these high allergen foods as soon as possible. If your baby has moderate to severe eczema or asthma, or you have allergies within the family, then your conversation needs to go forward to your pediatrician and maybe even a pediatric allergist to talk to them about, do you need a skin prick test first, or will it be the actual food you're introducing? But in terms of the general public, we do have a recommendation to just go ahead, introduce these high allergen foods. If you want scrambled eggs near the beginning of food introduction, you go for it. What are you watching for to see if it's okay for your baby? In terms of GI issues, you're watching for gas and bloating that could represent an intolerance, not necessarily a full-blown allergy, but an intolerance. If you have a delayed GI reaction, maybe 3-4 hours later, it could be something called FPIES. And this is similar to an allergy, but it's a reaction within the gut. And it's something that is more common with things like oats and rice, butternut squash, and avocado. So foods that we don't necessarily put into that high allergen category. If on the external of your body, you're seeing redness of the cheeks, you're seeing any sort of swelling in the lips, in the eyes, redness anywhere else in the body, or new formed kind of pieces of eczema or breathing difficulties, these are reactions from the immune system. This is to tell us your child could have an allergy to this food. It's important to remember you won't always see this on the first introduction of a food. It could be on the second or the third. So we're always monitoring and watching for some of these reactions that could take place. As soon as your child has an allergy to one food, you may be nervous about introducing others, but one allergy doesn't always mean there will be more. It means that there can be, and so continuing to keep an eye is important. You may be thinking, what about peanuts? Peanuts is like this top allergen that a lot of families have questions about. They're right in that same category of, as long as you don't have red flags to say that there's a high likelihood of an allergen, you're going to go ahead and introduce. And even for children that have mild to moderate eczema, there still is the recommendation to go ahead and introduce peanuts early on. Of course, we're not going to take a 6-month-old child and introduce them to an actual peanut. That's a choking hazard. Anything that couldn't fit through a drinking straw easily is a choking hazard, and peanuts would be right in there. You might wonder, maybe peanut butter. It's kind of sticky. It can be a choking hazard too. So what I recommend is finding a way that you're going to melt peanut butter into something, and then it's less of a choking hazard. So perhaps you have a dish that you could stir a nut butter into, and that would be a way to expose the child. If you are feeling nervous about these new recommendations and exposure, the back of the hand and the cheek are really sensitive areas of the body. Maybe you want to expose those areas of the body first. Again, it's reducing your anxiety. It will always then help to reduce any anxiety that your child might feel. So we could go on and on under this topic, but those are some of the main things that I get questions about as a dietitian in the pediatric realm. And certainly if you have more questions, you can go ahead and let us know in the comments below. Oh, excuse you.